What if I told you that the fastest way to destroy a nation is to make it rich? Not through hard work, not through innovation, but through easy money. In the 1500s, Spain discovered more silver than the world had ever seen. They didn't just become wealthy, they became unstoppable, or so they thought, because that silver didn't save Spain. It poisoned it. It destroyed work. It broke the economy. It funded endless wars. And it turned the richest empire on earth into one of the poorest in Europe. This is not a story about success. This is a warning. Unearned wealth is not a blessing. Every civilization shares the same fantasy. That wealth is the end of struggle. That if money appears in abundance, hardship disappears forever. We imagine that with enough money, nations become stable, people become happy, and power becomes permanent. History proves the opposite. In the early 16th century, Spain stood at the edge of a miracle. Fresh from the Reconquista, hardened by centuries of war, Spain was confident, religious, and aggressive. It had conquered enemies, expelled rivals, and unified its crown. But it was not yet unstoppable. Then the impossible happened. Spain did not simply grow rich. It discovered a shortcut to wealth. From the Americas came silver on a scale the world had never witnessed. Not trade, not innovation, not production. Just raw metal, extracted from the earth and shipped across the ocean. Within decades, Spain transformed into the dominant global superpower. Its armies were feared. Its fleets ruled the seas. Its empire stretched across Europe, the Americas, and Asia. The sun never set on Spanish territory. To the Spanish crown, this was not luck. It was destiny. Kings and nobles believed this wealth was proof of divine favor. God had chosen Spain to rule the world. Silver was not just money. It was validation. And that belief changed everything. Because when wealth comes without effort, it distorts reality. Spain began to confuse money with strength. They assumed silver itself was power. That possession was the same as productivity. That having money meant they would always be able to buy what they needed. They stopped asking a dangerous question. What happens if the silver stops? Instead of investing in agriculture, manufacturing, or trade, Spain relied on shipments from overseas. Instead of building systems, they waited for fleets. Instead of producing value, they consumed it. Silver became a psychological crutch. It removed urgency. It removed discipline. It removed fear. Why modernize farms when silver ships are coming? Why improve industry when foreign goods can be bought easily? Why encourage work when wealth arrives without it? The economy began to lose its foundation. This is the illusion of infinite wealth, the belief that money itself is wealth rather than a tool. And illusions are dangerous because they hide decay. Spain appeared powerful, but beneath the surface, its economy was weakening. Productive labor declined. Skills disappeared. Dependence grew. Silver provided a high, a sense of invincibility. But like any drug, it masked damage rather than preventing it. Spain believed it had escaped the laws of economics, that it had outgrown the need to produce, innovate, and adapt. In reality, it was walking directly into collapse. Because wealth that is not earned does not strengthen a society. It sedates it. And Spain, surrounded by gold and silver, was already losing the ability to stand on its own. The fall had not yet begun, but the foundation was already cracking. The illusion of wealth began far from Spain, high in the Andes Mountains of present-day Bolivia, in a place so cold and elevated that the human body struggles to survive. The year was 1545. According to legend, an indigenous man named Diego Gualpa was chasing a llama across a barren slope when he slipped. Reaching for balance, he tore a plant from the ground. Beneath the roots, the earth glimmered. Silver. What he had uncovered was Cerro Rico, the rich mountain, a geological anomaly unlike anything seen before. A mountain with veins of silver, so dense it appeared almost limitless. When Spanish conquistadors arrived, they were stunned. This was the El Dorado they had dreamed of. Not a city of gold, but something far more valuable, a permanent source of precious metal. Almost overnight, the wasteland transformed into potassy. A city built at over 13,000 feet above sea level, where the air was thin and every step left men breathless. Despite the harsh environment, Dossier exploded into one of the largest cities on Earth. Within decades, it rivaled London and Paris in size. But this wealth demanded sacrifice. Silver does not mine itself. To extract it, Spain imposed the meta system, a mandatory labor draft on indigenous communities. Entire villages were forced to send men to the mountain. Refusal meant punishment. Escape was nearly impossible. Tens of thousands were driven into narrow tunnels carved deep into the rock. There was little light, little air, and constant danger. Miners worked for days without seeing the sun. They climbed unstable ladders carrying sacks of or heavier than their bodies. Cave-ins were common. Death was expected. Survival depended on coca leaves, which dulled hunger and exhaustion. Many never returned home, but digging the silver was only the beginning. The ore extracted from Cerro Rico was low-grade. To purify it, the Spanish introduced a revolutionary but lethal technology, mercury amalgamation. Crushed rock was mixed with mercury, and workers were forced to trample the mixture barefoot. Mercury entered their bodies through skin and lungs, slowly destroying their nervous systems. Men went blind. They trembled uncontrollably. They lost their minds. The process increased silver output dramatically. It also ensured a steady flow of death. Locals began calling Cerro Rico the mountain that eats men. It is estimated that millions died in and around Dossier over the centuries. Not in a single massacre, but through slow, relentless exploitation. Every silver coin minted in Spain carried an invisible cost: pain, poison, human lives. The mountain fueled Spain's rise, but also revealed the true nature of its wealth. This was not prosperity created through innovation or productivity. It was extraction, pure and brutal. Spain's empire was being built on a foundation of suffering. And while silver flowed outward to enrich the world, death flowed inward into the mountain. The curse had already taken root. The silver did not stay in the mines. It crossed oceans. It entered Spain in waves. Year after year, treasure fleets arrived in Seville, unloading tons of silver. To the crown, this seemed like pure prosperity. But beneath the celebration, the economy was quietly breaking. Money is not neutral. When too much of it appears too quickly, it changes behavior. As silver flooded into Spain, the supply of money exploded, but the supply of goods did not. There were no more loaves of bread, no more shoes, no more cloth, only more silver chasing the same products. Prices began to rise, at first slowly, then relentlessly. This became known as the price revolution, the first sustained inflation crisis in European history. Over the course of the 16th century, prices in Spain increased by nearly 400%. In the modern world, inflation of 2 or 3% is considered normal. But in a pre-industrial society, this was catastrophic. For centuries, prices had barely changed. A worker expected stability. Now that stability vanished. Wages did not keep up. A Spanish laborer discovered that despite the country being richer than ever, his earnings bought less food than his grandfathers had. Hunger returned, not because food was scarce, but because money no longer worked. Inflation broke trust. Contracts became meaningless. Savings evaporated. Planning for the future became impossible. And the damage went deeper. Rising prices destroyed Spanish production. As inflation made domestic goods more expensive, Spanish manufacturers could not compete with foreign producers. A shoemaker in Spain had to charge 5 times more than a shoemaker in France or England. Consumers did what consumers always do. They bought cheaper imports. Silver entered Spain, then immediately left it, flowing outward to pay for food, clothing, weapons, and luxury goods made abroad. Spain became a transit point, not an engine of wealth. This cycle hollowed out the economy. Farmers abandoned their fields. Craftsmen closed workshops. Why struggle to produce when imported goods were cheaper and silver was plentiful? Work itself lost dignity. A cultural shift followed. In Spain, the ideal citizen became the hidalgo, a minor noble who did not work, but lived off pensions, rents, or royal favor. Manual labor and commerce became socially shameful. Ambition shifted away from innovation and toward proximity to the state. The goal was no longer to build something, but to access silver. Government positions multiplied. Productive enterprises declined. While England improved agriculture and the Netherlands built factories and financial institutions, Spain built churches and palaces. The economy looked wealthy, but it was fragile. Inflation had not merely raised prices. It had severed the connection between effort and reward. And when that connection breaks, societies decay. Spain still appeared powerful. Silver still arrived. But the mechanisms that create real wealth, productivity, skill, and innovation were disappearing. The collapse had not yet arrived, but the economy was already failing from the inside. By the late 16th century, Spain stood at the peak of global power. Its empire stretched across continents. Its king ruled more land than any monarch before him. That king was Philip II. From his vast palace, El Escorial, Philip governed Spain, Portugal, much of Italy, the Netherlands, the Philippines, and the Americas. In theory, he was the most powerful man on earth. In practice, his empire was bleeding. Power on this scale required constant war. Philip did not see conflict as a choice, but as a duty. He believed he was God's instrument, responsible for defending Catholicism against all threats. Those threats were everywhere. The Ottoman Empire challenged Spanish dominance in the Mediterranean. France contested influence in Europe. The Protestant Reformation spread through northern lands. The Netherlands, wealthy, commercial, and Protestant, rebelled against Spanish rule. Spain fought them all. Armies had to be fed, armed, and paid. Fleets had to be built and maintained. Wars were waged not for years, but for decades. And Spain no longer had an economy capable of supporting this burden. Domestic industry had collapsed under inflation. Spain could not produce enough weapons, supplies, or ships. Even gunpowder and cannons were often purchased from foreign merchants, sometimes from Spain's own enemies. The empire was being held together by silver. But even that was not enough. Philip II began spending money before it arrived. To do this, he relied on asientos, short-term, high-interest loans provided by German and Genoese bankers. These were not investments. They were emergency loans. Philip promised future silver in exchange for immediate cash. Interest rates were brutal, often reaching 20 or even 40%. Spain had become an empire on credit. The greatest expression of this gamble came in 1588. Philip launched the Spanish Armada, the largest and most expensive naval force ever assembled. 130 ships, 30,000 men, thousands of cannons. The Armada was meant to crush Protestant England and secure Spain's dominance of Europe. It failed, not in battle, but at sea. Storms shattered the fleet. Ships were driven onto the rocks of Scotland and Ireland. Thousands drowned. Half the Armada was lost. The silver spent to build it was gone forever. But the loans remained. Bankers demanded payment. Interest continued to compound. Spain could not keep up. In 1557, Philip II declared the first sovereign default in modern history. Spain suspended payments to its creditors. Banks collapsed in Antwerp and Genoa. European credit markets froze. But the wars did not stop. Spain borrowed again and again. Defaults followed in 1575, 1596, and beyond. Each one made borrowing more expensive. Each one tightened the trap. By the end of Philip's reign, interest payments alone exceeded the empire's total tax revenue. Spain was no longer funding war. War was consuming Spain. Silver arrived in Seville only to be transferred immediately to foreign bankers. The empire functioned as a delivery system for its creditors. Power built on debt is fragile. And Spain's power was already cracking. By the mid-17th century, the illusion was gone. The silver that once defined Spain's power began to fade. The great mines of Dossier were no longer producing as they once had. The richest veins were exhausted. Extraction became slower, deeper, and more expensive. For a nation that had built its entire system around constant inflows of silver, this was fatal. Spain had spent more than a century consuming wealth instead of creating it. When the flow slowed, there was nothing beneath it. Industry was weak. Agriculture was neglected. Innovation was absent. Cities across Castile emptied. Workshops closed. Trade routes fell silent. Population declined as famine and disease returned. Fields lay abandoned. Once busy towns slipped into poverty. The empire still existed on maps, but it no longer functioned. The financial system collapsed alongside production. Years of defaults had destroyed trust. Spanish credit was toxic. Borrowing became nearly impossible. Desperate, the crown debased the currency. Silver coins were replaced with copper money known as vellon. These coins had little intrinsic value, but citizens were forced to accept them at the value of silver. The result was predictable. Prices spiraled. People hoarded silver and refused copper. Markets fractured. The wealthy conducted transactions in real money. The poor were trapped in worthless currency. The middle class disappeared. This economic division locked Spain into stagnation. Without trust in money, commerce collapsed. Without commerce, recovery was impossible. By the late 1600s, Spain was no longer a global leader. It became known as the sick man of Europe, a former superpower living on memories. Meanwhile, the rest of Europe moved forward. The silver that passed through Spain did not vanish. It transformed. In the Netherlands, it financed shipyards, banks, and the world's first stock exchange. In England, it funded agriculture reform, industrial expansion, and scientific progress. These nations understood something Spain never fully accepted. Wealth is not stored. It is generated. True prosperity comes from productivity, education, and innovation. From people creating value, not extracting it. Spain had mistaken possession for strength. It believed ownership of silver guaranteed power. Instead, silver hollowed the nation out. The story of the Spanish Empire is not unique. It is the clearest example of the resource curse, the idea that easy, unearned wealth weakens societies by breaking the link between effort and reward. Whether it is silver in the 16th century or oil in the modern world, the pattern remains the same. Easy money removes discipline. It discourages work. It breeds dependence. And when the resource fades, collapse follows. Spain did not fall because it lacked riches. It fell because it forgot how to produce them. Surrounded by gold, it lost the ability to stand. This is not just history. It is a warning. Empires are not destroyed by poverty. They are destroyed by complacency. History doesn't fail nations. Nations fail when they stop producing and start consuming wealth they never earned. Spain had gold. It had power. It had the world. And it lost all three because money replaced work. The lesson is simple, and it is timeless. Unearned wealth is not a blessing. It is a test. If you want to understand how economies rise and fall, subscribe for more stories like this.